There is a storm in the soul of every human being, a silent tempest swirling beneath the surface of our curated lives. In an age where we worship the gods of image and illusion, where every moment is filtered, every flaw disguised, there is a hunger that cannot be fed by perfection. We ache not for the polished, but for the profound, not for the flawless, but for the fiercely authentic. The world is drowning in surface, and yet what calls to us, what truly lingers, are the echoes of the unguarded, the raw, the real. Imagine standing at the edge of a mirror, not the kind that flatters, but the kind that reveals, the kind that strips away the layers you've worn for survival, the agreeable smile, the careful silence, the practiced indifference. What do you see? Beneath the performance, beneath the armor, there is a presence. It is the quiet gravity of someone who has stopped apologizing for their existence. The kind of presence that is felt long after you leave the room, like the scent of rain on dry earth, or the hush that follows thunder. This is the paradox of magnetism. We are told to seek what is likable, to chase applause, to polish every edge until we shine. But the souls who haunt our memories, who shape our lives, are rarely the ones who fit in. They are the ones who dared to stand out, sometimes by accident, often by necessity. They are the ones who refused to shrink, who laughed too loudly, who wept without shame, who told the truth even when their voice trembled. The unforgettable do not perform for approval. They are rooted, anchored, unmovable. They are not the loudest, but the most real. Carl Jung, the cartographer of the unconscious, wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not the version your parents preferred, not the persona your niche demands, not the mask that wins you invitations to rooms that suffocate your spirit. The journey is not outward, but inward, a descent into the labyrinth of your own contradictions. There, in the shadows, you find the gold. The parts you were told to hide, to silence, to exile, those are the very keys to your power. We spend years editing ourselves, trimming away the wildness, the intensity, the inconvenient truths. We learn to perform before we learn to speak. We post smiles while our hearts are weary, say, "I'm fine," because the truth feels too heavy to carry. But every act of self-abandonment carves a hollow inside, a hunger that no amount of applause can fill. Approval is a drug, and like all drugs, it loses its potency. The more you chase it, the emptier you become. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But how do you know yourself when you've become a stranger to your own soul? When your reflection is just a collage of other people's expectations? The world doesn't need another echo. It needs your voice, trembling or thunderous. It needs the truth only you can tell. Your authenticity is not a liability, it is a revolution. The Stoics, those ancient architects of inner strength, understood this long before hashtags and highlight reels. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, did not write to impress. He wrote to remember himself, to anchor his mind against the tides of flattery and fear. Epictetus, born a slave, became a master not by conquering others, but by mastering his own mind. Their secret was not detachment, but depth, not indifference, but integrity. To live stoically is not to be unfeeling, but to be unshakable. It is to choose presence over performance, substance over spectacle. It is to realize that your worth is not a currency to be traded for belonging. You do not need to audition for your own life. The only permission you need is your own. Consider the people who changed you. Were they the ones who had all the answers, who glided through life untouched by pain? Or were they the ones who let you see their scars, the ones who let you into their storm, who stood in their truth even when it cost them approval? Wholeness, not perfection, is what moves us. The willingness to be seen, to be felt, to risk being misunderstood, that is the mark of the unforgettable. Socrates challenged us not to live on autopilot, but to examine our lives with ruthless honesty. Where are you pretending just to be accepted? Where have you traded your truth for comfort? These questions are not accusations, but invitations. They are the cracks where the light gets in, the places where your masks begin to slip. And when you peel them off, you find something wild and unfamiliar: freedom. They will tell you that being real is too much, that you're too emotional, too intense, too soft, too complicated. But every too much is just a mirror reflecting someone else's limits. The world is not afraid of your intensity, it is afraid of what it cannot control. The Stoics taught that freedom is not the absence of hardship, but the refusal to be owned by anything outside yourself. When you stop bending to fit into someone else's comfort zone, you reclaim your life. You become ungovernable, not by defiance, but by authenticity. Plato spoke of the shadow on the cave wall, a false image mistaken for reality. How many of us are still living in that cave, clutching at shadows, afraid to step into the blinding light of our own truth? Authenticity is not easy to swallow. It is bold, layered, sometimes uncomfortable, but it is the only thing that endures. When you stop hiding, the right people find you. Not the ones who tolerate your shine, but the ones who reflect it back. The rest fall away quietly, naturally, without a fight. Let them go. You were never meant to be a watered-down version of yourself. You were meant to be whole, fully expressed, at peace with your contradictions. Not everyone will understand. You do not need 1,000 fans. You need a handful of souls who see you, truly see you and love you not in spite of your flaws, but because of them. The next time you feel yourself reaching for a mask, ask, is this me or is this the version of me they'll accept? That question is a doorway. Walk through it. Because self-respect does not begin with boundaries, it begins with honesty. And the most important honesty is the kind you owe yourself. In the end, we are not remembered for being liked by everyone. We are remembered for being real with the few who mattered. Let your presence be something they feel, not just something they see. Let your authenticity speak louder than your appearance. Let your truth be the thing that makes you unforgettable. Growth. We all say we want it, but few understand what it truly demands. Real growth is not a glow up, it is a letting go. It is the courage to shed old skins, to outgrow the rooms that once felt like home. It is not about chasing approval, but about aligning more and more with your true self. Some confuse growth with performance. They shapeshift to fit in, not to level up. But fitting in is not belonging. One changes your outfit, the other changes your life. Plato said, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." That is the heart of transformation. It is not about impressing others with how much you've changed, but about looking in the mirror and knowing that every step forward is a choice. Not a survival tactic, not a mask, but a decision. A deep, quiet, grounded decision to become better. Not for them, but for you. The Stoics had this figured out long ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one." Growth, for the Stoics, was not about external achievements, but about character, about becoming someone whose inner world is not ruled by outside noise. While others chase popularity, the Stoics do the inner work, the quiet power, the stuff that lasts. Evolving does not mean abandoning who you are. It means refining who you are. You do not throw away your essence. You expand it, upgrade it. Like a device that still looks like yours, still feels like yours, but now runs smoother, faster, smarter. That's how your identity works too. You're not becoming someone new. You're removing the glitches, cleaning up the programming, unlocking features you didn't know were there. Growth brings your potential online. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole. Part of that journey is shedding the parts of you built on fear, on pleasing others, on avoiding discomfort. Not everything you picked up along the way was meant to stay. Some beliefs, some habits, some identities, they were survival tools. They served their purpose. But now, they keep you small. The moment you recognize that is the moment you start to evolve consciously. Not reactively, not to prove something, but because you finally understand something deeper about yourself. Choosing to grow does not mean rejecting who you are now. It means loving yourself enough not to stay stagnant. People who fear change think growth is about self-rejection, but real growth is about respecting the present so much that you refuse to let it be your limit. You say, "I've come this far. Now I'm ready to go further." That is not self-rejection. That is self-respect. Socrates believed the unexamined life was not worth living. When you examine your life, not with judgment but with curiosity, you begin to see the patterns, where you've grown, where you're stuck, where you've compromised your values just to fit into rooms you never even wanted to be in. That awareness is power. You cannot change what you're unwilling to face, but once you see it clearly, you get your power back. You realize you don't need to wait for permission to become the next version of yourself. You can just start. Growth is messy. It's not all glow-ups and breakthroughs. Sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes it's lonely. Sometimes it means saying goodbye to people who only like the older, quieter, more agreeable version of you. Let them go. You're not here to keep everyone comfortable. You're here to keep your soul awake. Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. Growth is the same, is not a one-time leap, it's a daily decision. Choosing reflection over reaction, discipline over impulse, courage over comfort. You won't always get it right. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. It's becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to announce their evolution, because it's written all over how you live, how you speak, how you carry yourself. You'll know you're evolving when your silence says more than your explanations, when your peace becomes louder than your anxiety, when the things that used to trigger you now teach you, when the people you used to chase now chase clarity, because you've made it so clear who you are and where you're going. If you're wondering if it's time to change, here's your sign. Don't wait for rock bottom. Don't wait for permission. You're allowed to outgrow what once felt like home. You're allowed to shift, to stretch, to let go of labels that no longer define you. Growth isn't betrayal. Growth is truth. And when it's rooted in your values, not your fears, it becomes something no one can take from you. You don't grow to be loved. You grow because you already love yourself enough to move. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not the version of you that stayed the same for acceptance, but the version of you that kept becoming, no matter who didn't get it. We've been sold the illusion that to be loved, respected, remembered, we must be flawless, that we must erase every rough edge, every past mistake, and wear a polished version of ourselves like armor. But here's the truth. Perfection doesn't connect people. Pain does. Struggle does. Humanity does. Nobody bonds over how perfect your life looks. They bond over the moments you got knocked down and still chose to rise. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But real self-knowledge doesn't come from studying your strengths. It comes from owning your shadows, from being honest about the parts of you that didn't always have it together, from looking at your flaws and saying, "That's mine and I'm not ashamed of it." Shame only has power when you try to hide. The moment you bring those flaws into the light, they lose their grip. And in that moment, you start to take your power back. Jung put it best. What you resist persists. What you accept transforms. That part of you you've been tucking away, the one you think makes you unlovable, too emotional, too complicated, that might actually be your superpower. The very thing that could set you apart, make someone feel seen, or lead someone else out of their darkness. But if you bury it out of fear, you rob yourself and the world of what makes you uniquely you. We've all got scars, emotional, mental, maybe even physical. Society's been trying to sell us cover-up for years. Cover up your pain, your past, your sensitivity, your story. But those scars are not signs of weakness. They are proof you healed, proof you felt deeply, fought through and didn't give up. That resilience, that bounce back, that's what makes you magnetic. People don't remember the person who never cracked. They remember the one who cracked but didn't collapse. Let's bring in the Stoics for a moment. Epictetus taught that it's not what happens to you, but how you respond that matters. Your mistakes, your failures, they're not who you are. Your response to them, that's your character, your identity, your story. And stories don't move people when everything goes right. They move people when the protagonist faces the fire and keeps going anyway. Socrates said, "Be as you wish to seem." Not perfect, not pristine, just real. Because people aren't looking for idols, they're looking for proof that being human doesn't make them broken. When you show up, flaws and all, you become a mirror. One that reflects back to others what's possible when you stop trying to be untouchable and start being honest. Now think about this. What's one thing you've been hiding because you thought it made you less? One chapter in your story you've been scared to share because you worried it would make people look at you differently? What if, instead of making you weak, that part of your story actually makes you unforgettable? What if the thing you've been ashamed of is exactly what someone else needs to hear to feel less alone? Plato believed that truth was not just something external, but something deeply internal. And what greater truth is there than to say, yes, I've struggled, yes, I've failed, and yes, I'm still here? That's not a confession. That's a declaration. That's you standing in your full humanity and refusing to shrink for anyone else's comfort. The world doesn't need another filtered personality. It needs realness. It needs people who've been through it and didn't let it turn them cold. People who still care deeply, even after being hurt. Who still show up fully, even when it's scary. That's the kind of presence that sticks with you. That's the kind of energy that walks into a room and makes people feel something. You don't need to apologize for the old version of you. They were doing the best they could with what they knew. You honor that version by becoming someone stronger, someone wiser, not by erasing them, but by building on them. Your growth isn't about forgetting where you've been. It's about owning it so fully that no one can use it against you. If you've got flaws, welcome to the club. You're not broken. You're just real. And real people don't need to be perfect. They just need to be honest, resilient, and willing to show up even when they're not finished healing. There's a quiet desperation so many of us carry, without even realizing it. The craving to be picked, to be seen, to be validated. It starts young. We're trained to raise our hands and wait to be called on, to play nice, be agreeable, and hope someone notices us. But what no one tells you is this. The more you try to be chosen, the less you feel like you belong. Because being chosen puts all the power in someone else's hands. It says, I need you to see my worth before I can believe in it myself. And that's not power. That's permission-seeking dressed as love. But here's the shift that flips your whole reality. Stop waiting to be picked. Start deciding who earns access. That one change. It's not small, it's revolutionary. Because now, instead of shrinking to fit into someone else's world, you're standing tall in your own and asking, does this person deserve to be here? Not from arrogance, but from alignment. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said, as long as you live, keep learning how to live. And part of learning how to live is learning how not to beg for belonging. You weren't put here to audition for connection. You're not a product trying to earn a sale. You're a human being, full, flawed, growing. And the people who are meant for you, they won't need convincing. They'll feel your energy and recognize it, not just as valuable, but as rare. Jung believed that people project their unmet needs and shadows onto others. If someone makes you feel like you have to prove yourself to be worthy of love, maybe what they're really showing you is their own emptiness, their inability to see worth without performance. But that's their lesson, not yours to internalize. Your lesson is this: you are the chooser. Your life is your space. Your energy is your currency. Not everyone gets unlimited access just because they ask. Think about how different your relationships would look if, instead of wondering, do they like me, you asked, do they align with the version of me I'm becoming? Not the version that needs applause, not the one that settles, but the version that is grounded, evolving, and choosing peace over chaos. Suddenly, the focus isn't on how to be more likable, it's on how to live more authentically. And when you live from that place, something wild happens. People start respecting you, not for what you do for them, but for how you hold yourself. Plato once said, the measure of a man is what he does with power. And personal power, real, grounded, non-performative power, comes from having standards, from knowing that love, attention, and intimacy aren't things you chase. They're things you welcome when they come from the right place. You get to decide who steps closer and who stays at the gate. Not to play games, but to protect your peace. And let's be real, peace is expensive. You fought for it. Don't give it away for cheap. There's a confidence that doesn't need to speak. A presence that doesn't need to perform. When you stop chasing approval, people feel it. They feel your self-respect. They feel your boundaries. And something in them, consciously or not, starts thinking, this person's different. I don't want to lose this. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not because you were the loudest, not because you were the most agreeable, but because you were whole, and you didn't hand out pieces of yourself to everyone who smiled at you. Socrates taught that the secret to change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So build this version of you, the one who doesn't shrink, the one who doesn't ask to be chosen, the one who knows that the right people will never make them question their worth. And the wrong ones, let them go. You don't need their permission to be powerful. From now on, don't measure your value by how many people want you. Measure it by how true you are to yourself. Because when you show up with that kind of energy, that kind of intentionality, people feel it. And more importantly, you feel it. You walk different. You choose better. You no longer need to be chosen. You already are, by you. And that changes everything. There's an unspoken rule floating around. Don't feel too much. Don't speak too passionately. Don't care too deeply. Be chill. Be easy. Be low maintenance. But let's tell the truth. None of that creates real connection. It creates distance. It creates performance. It turns you into a muted version of yourself. If you've ever been told you're too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too intense, I want you to hear this loud and clear. That's not a flaw. That's a gift. You feel deeply because you care. You express intensely because you're alive. You're not too much. You're just not easy to ignore. Jung believed the emotional world was not something to repress, but something to integrate. He said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. That intensity you carry, it's not there to break you, it's there to wake you. It's the part of you that won't allow life to stay surface level. And yes, it may make some people uncomfortable, but that's not your problem to fix. That discomfort usually says more about their emotional limitations than your emotional intelligence." Let's talk about intelligence for a second. Emotional depth is not weakness, it's wisdom. Aristotle spoke of the virtue of moderation, but he didn't mean suppressing your nature. He meant mastering it, directing it, feeling without drowning, loving without losing yourself. That's the difference between chaos and courage. And make no mistake, your ability to feel deeply is courageous. Because in a world where most people numb out, scroll endlessly, or build walls, you show up with your heart still open. That's not too much. That's rare. Why do people call you too much? Because intensity can't be controlled. It demands presence. It asks questions. It feels everything. And that level of honesty scares those who are hiding behind masks. Your passion makes them question their apathy. Your tears make them face their numbness. Your truth makes them uncomfortable with their lies. So rather than do the work to meet you where you are, they label you. Too intense, too emotional, too complicated. But that's not truth. That's projection. The Stoics, yes, even the masters of self-discipline, never told us to deny emotion. They told us to understand it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That includes your emotional life. You don't need to tone yourself down. You just need to direct your fire. Channel your passion. Let your emotions inform you, not rule you. That's strength. That's emotional maturity. That's what sets you apart. Socrates once said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." Well, knowing yourself means knowing how deeply you feel and not making yourself wrong for it. It means honoring the fact that your sensitivity isn't weakness. It's awareness. It's your radar for truth. It's the reason you walk into a room and feel what no one is saying. It's why your intuition is so strong, why your connections go deeper, and why the people who truly know you feel seen in a way they've never felt before. So no, you're not too much. You're just unwilling to live small. You're unwilling to fake indifference. You're unwilling to detach from things that matter to you. That doesn't make you difficult. That makes you authentic. And in a world that teaches people to shut down, you're choosing to stay open. That's a choice. That's a strength. And it's unforgettable. The next time someone tells you you're too much, smile. Look them in the eye and say, "Then go find less." Because you're not shrinking to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. You're expanding into your full emotional power. And the people who are meant for you, they'll never ask you to shrink. They'll rise to meet you. They'll match your depth. They'll celebrate your passion, not flinch from it. Because people who feel deeply love deeply. And people who love deeply, they change lives. So don't dim that. Don't dilute it. Be all of you. Be bold. Be passionate. Be honest. Because that's how you leave your mark, not by being agreeable, but by being real. There's a quiet power that comes alive in someone the moment they realize they deserve more. Not in a loud, boastful way, but in that calm, steady presence that says, "I'm not settling anymore." It's like a switch flips, and suddenly the old patterns, the one-sided relationships, the draining conversations, the tolerating, the pretending, they stop. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Because once you know what you're worth, the begging ends, the chasing ends. You're no longer seeking scraps of love or fragments of attention. You're holding out for what's real. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, said, "Never value anything as profitable to yourself, which shall compel you to break your promise, to lose your self-respect, or to hate any man." Translation: if you have to betray yourself to keep someone, it's already too expensive. And the people who get that, the ones who walk away without burning down the room, they're dangerous in the best possible way. Because they can't be manipulated. They won't be guilted, and they won't stay where their peace keeps getting broken. Most people aren't afraid of losing someone who needs them. They're afraid of losing someone who doesn't need them, but chose them. There's a difference. When you know what lifts your energy and what drains it, you stop making decisions from loneliness. You start making them from clarity. And that's rare. That's magnetic. That's what makes people want to earn a place in your life instead of assuming one. Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But the truth is, Once you do, you stop asking others to do it for you. And when you're no longer performing for love, people start seeing the real you. That version, the one who's grounded, self-respecting, unwilling to play small, is the version they don't want to lose. Because that kind of presence is stabilizing. It's refreshing. It's real. But let's be clear, boundaries aren't walls. They're filters. They don't push people away. They let the right ones in. Boundaries say, here's what I will allow, here's what I won't. Not because you're cold, but because you're clear. And that clarity, that's what keeps your energy safe. That's what makes sure you're not constantly in repair mode, recovering from things that should have never gotten through your door in the first place. Socrates taught that the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So if you're tired of being drained, overlooked, or taken for granted, maybe it's time to stop trying to fix the people who don't know how to value you. Maybe it's time to build a new standard, a new way of showing up that doesn't bend just to keep the peace. Because peace that costs your self-worth is just disguised self-abandonment. Knowing what you deserve doesn't mean you think you're better than anyone. It means you've finally decided you're not less. That decision changes the way you speak, the way you love, the way you choose. You stop entertaining half effort, half presence, half truth. You don't demand perfection, but you require consistency. You don't want fairy tales, you want honesty. And you stop asking, am I asking for too much, and start asking, why was I settling for so little? Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit. So let self-respect become a habit. Let saying no when something feels off become natural. Let choosing peace over popularity become your go-to move. The world will adjust. The wrong ones will fall away. The right ones will rise. Here's your challenge. Revisit your standards today. Not your wish list, not the fantasy, but your non-negotiables. The things that protect your peace, that protect your time, that protect you. Because once those are in place, you stop waiting to be treated right. You start expecting it. And that changes everything. There's a kind of love that feels like pressure, like weight. The kind that whispers, don't leave me. I need you to be okay. It's not bad intentioned, but it's heavy. It's the kind of love that suffocates instead of supports. And here's the reason why. When you love from a place of emptiness, that love becomes a transaction, a subtle plea for emotional survival. You're not really offering love, you're offering need. And that kind of love, no matter how sincere, ends up exhausting both people. Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But that's also where real love begins. Because once you accept yourself, fully and without conditions, your love stops being something you need to survive and becomes something you choose to give. You're no longer handing people your broken pieces and begging them to glue you back together. You're whole. And when you're whole, your love becomes light. It becomes peace. It uplifts instead of overwhelms. People think intensity equals love, that clinging means connection. But real connection isn't built on fear of losing someone. It's built on the freedom to choose them over and over again, without fear, without dependency. And that kind of love, it's rare. Because it's not about possession. It's about presence. It says, I'm here because I want to be, not because I'll fall apart if I'm not. The Stoics taught that our peace should never be at the mercy of things we cannot control. Epictetus reminded us, only the educated are free. In this case, emotionally educated. Free from the need to be validated to feel worthy. Free from giving love just to receive it back. When you've done the inner work, when you've filled your own cup, you don't chase love anymore, you radiate it. And radiance is unforgettable. Think about it. When someone walks into a room with calm confidence, with joy that doesn't rely on others, you feel it. It's magnetic. It's grounding. It's healing. People fear losing that kind of energy. Not because it feeds their ego, but because it awakens something real, something stable, something sacred. You don't get that kind of presence from someone who's emotionally starving. You get it from someone who knows they're already full, and anything they share is a gift, not a cry for rescue. Socrates once said, the hottest love has the coldest end. That's the kind of love born from obsession, from neediness, from trying to fill a void through someone else. But when your love starts from fullness, when it flows from a life you've built, peace you've earned, joy you've discovered in your own silence, that love doesn't burn out. It evolves. It breathes. It doesn't collapse under its own weight because it's not asking to be saved. It's offering a hand to walk beside someone. This is why it's so important to fill your own cup first, not later, not when someone worthy comes along. Now. Because if your cup is empty, you'll drain every connection trying to quench a thirst only you can satisfy. But if your cup is full, if you've spent time healing, loving yourself, building your sense of worth, you'll give from your overflow. And the people who deserve to be close to you, they won't try to drink from your source. They'll be nourished by the abundance and they'll honour it. Aristotle believed that the highest form of love, philia, was not romantic, but virtuous friendship. A bond between people who seek the good in each other and themselves. That kind of love doesn't cling. It doesn't control. It strengthens both people to become more of who they truly are. And you only get there by being whole before you arrive. So ask yourself, am I giving love from a wound or from wisdom? Am I offering my heart from fear or from freedom? Because love should never feel like a lifeline. It should feel like light. And the truth is, you don't need someone to complete you. You need someone who complements the wholeness you already fought hard to earn. That's the energy people are afraid to lose. That's the presence they'll never find twice. Take care of yourself first. Fill your soul. Know your worth. And then, when you love, let it be a reflection of your fullness, not a plea to be filled. The right ones, they won't just stay. They'll protect that light, because they'll know they're in the presence of something rare, and you'll know it too. The most unforgettable energy you'll ever carry is the quiet knowing that you are whole, without needing to prove, perform or chase. When you choose yourself first, the right people will never ask you to shrink. They'll rise with you. If this message stirred something in you, let it settle into your bones. Let it remind you that this space, this life, is not about perfection, but about becoming. Slowly, intentionally, powerfully, the journey continues, and the next step, it's yours to take.